It was a great movie, but
Yeah.
it seemed like there was resistance to that movie.
Especially with something like The Passion that I did, the written word was very important because it was, you got all those books, the Bible, you've got the different gospels and stuff that people are quite familiar with. Half the time, they didn't even need to read the subtitles. They could look at it and know what was.
On January 9th, 2025, filmmaker Mel Gibson appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience and shared insights that reshaped how many people view one of the most controversial religious films ever made. His remarks didn't just challenge Joe Rogan's perspective, they pushed millions of viewers to reconsider a film they believed they already fully understood.
Intention is, when I was making it, it was like, you're making this film, and the idea was that we're all responsible for this, that his sacrifice was for all man.
The Passion of the Christ went on to earn over $612 million worldwide. It was filmed entirely in ancient languages and rejected by every major Hollywood studio before its release. For 2 decades, audiences believed they understood the film, but according to Mel Gibson, they had missed its deeper meaning entirely. When he appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast in 2025, Gibson explained that the violence, controversy, and criticism surrounding the film had distracted viewers from a message hidden beneath the surface. That message, he said, was carefully embedded into every frame through years of theological research and consultation with religious scholars. To understand the film's true purpose, Gibson traced its origins back to a personal breakdown. In the late 1990s, he was at the height of his Hollywood success following Braveheart. Yet internally, he was struggling with addiction and emotional emptiness. He later admitted that he felt a deep need to reconnect with something greater than himself in order to change the direction of his life. From that crisis emerged an intense focus on the final hours of Jesus Christ. Gibson studied scripture in its original languages and explored ancient religious texts. During this process, he discovered the writings of Anne Catherine Emmerich, a 19th century mystic whose visions describe detailed accounts of the crucifixion not found in the Bible. He treated these writings as a significant inspiration in shaping the film's structure and tone. A Catholic seminarian, Father John Bartunek, became closely involved in the production and later confirmed that much of what audiences saw on screen carried layers of theological meaning that were easy to overlook. The film was shot in ancient Italian locations designed to replicate first-century Jerusalem, often under extreme physical conditions that mirrored the suffering being portrayed. One of the most common misunderstandings, Gibson explained, was that audiences assumed the violence itself was the point. In reality, he said, the violence was a language, a way to express something that words alone could not. It was meant to represent not only physical suffering, but also the spiritual weight of human brokenness across history. Every wound, every strike, and every moment of pain symbolized something deeper than historical punishment. Within the theological framework behind the film, the suffering reflected the internal destruction caused by sin itself. Even the portrayal of Satan was intentionally symbolic. He does not appear as a typical monstrous figure, but rather as calm and almost beautiful, designed to represent how evil can disguise itself as something logical, appealing, or even harmless. One of the most debated scenes, a distorted infant held by Satan during a moment of extreme violence, was, according to Father Bartunek, an inversion of traditional Christian imagery. It symbolized the corruption of innocence and the distortion of purity. Even its timing and placement within the film were deliberately aligned with moments of intense suffering to amplify its symbolic impact. Gibson also presented Satan as a constant background presence throughout the film, never dominating the foreground but subtly influencing events from behind the scenes. This reflected his belief that evil rarely operates through direct force, but instead through influence, suggestion, and manipulation working quietly in the background. Another major artistic decision in The Passion of the Christ was the use of ancient languages such as Aramaic and Latin. Studio executives warned that audiences might reject it, but Mel Gibson remained firm. His goal was to strip away familiarity so viewers would not intellectually analyze the story, but instead experience it emotionally. Without easily understood dialogue, the audience was forced to focus on facial expressions, tone, and physical suffering. The production itself became surrounded by unusual reports, including severe onset injuries and even lightning strikes near filming locations, events some interpreted symbolically. Several cast members also claimed to experience personal spiritual shifts during the shoot, further deepening the myth and intensity surrounding the project. During his conversation with Joe Rogan, Gibson also pointed to historical arguments related to the crucifixion narrative. Rogan, despite his skeptical stance on religion, appeared deeply engaged as Gibson explained why the apostles' willingness to die for their beliefs stood out to him as a powerful historical indicator of sincerity and conviction. Ultimately, Gibson revealed that the Passion of the Christ was never intended to be a simple retelling of events in ancient Jerusalem. In his view, it was about humanity itself, including the audience. The central idea, he explained, was that all of humanity shares responsibility on a spiritual level, and the film was structured to reflect that belief. In a symbolic gesture, Gibson even included his own hand in the crucifixion scene, subtly placing himself within the narrative. For him, it represented a personal act of confession embedded within the film's imagery. Critics have long debated the historical accuracy and theological interpretations presented in the film, and those debates remain unresolved. However, Gibson believes that much of the deeper symbolic framework was missed, as public discussion largely focused on surface-level controversies. He has also confirmed development of a sequel, The Resurrection of the Christ, which he described as significantly more expansive in scope. According to him, it will explore not only the resurrection itself, but also broader spiritual themes, including the fall of angels, unseen spiritual realms, and the cosmic dimension of faith extending far beyond a traditional continuation of the original story. What made the Joe Rogan conversation particularly significant was not only what was discussed, but the dynamic between the two voices. A skeptical interviewer known for challenging mainstream narratives found himself listening without interruption, engaging with a perspective he had not previously considered in depth. In the end, Gibson suggests that the true impact of the film does not lie solely in its depiction of suffering, but in how each viewer chooses to interpret it. The story, according to him, was never just about ancient figures, it was about the viewer's own place within it. And that leaves a final question that both the film and the conversation ultimately return to. If you had been there, witnessing those events firsthand, what would you have done?